move on to our fourth, which is Lotus by Little Simz. And yeah, this was my pick. So, you know, Little Simz, for me, just best rapper out there at the moment. And coming into this one from an exceptionally high bar with 2022's No Thank You and 2021's Sometimes I Might Be Introvert. I would even add Grey Area from 2019, which for me was my entry point into Little Simz and her world, and is another fantastic album. So, you know, where does she go next? Basically, a slightly longer run-in, this one. I mean, to go from 2 in 2 years with Simbi and No Thank You, you'd expect that, to be fair. I think she owed it to herself. But in between, you know, a hell of a lot of turmoil. And also other albums which didn't see the light of day due to the ongoing legal dispute with Inflo and you know, her previous producer, who is so synonymous with those previous 2 albums as well, and you know, such a big part of just how epic they are from musically and with kind of the live band aspect and his wife Cleo Sol, you know, singing on the choruses of a lot of the tracks as well. So this is, you know, it's a vulnerable moment for Little Simz. That's come across in the interviews surrounding this. There's almost like more about the story than the actual album here, and but then you can't separate the two, because then actually lyrically a lot of that turmoil is covered. So yeah, in comes the new producer on the album. I should have noted it because
Miles Clinton James.
Thank you. Miles Clinton James. He does a fantastic job here. Because whilst it maybe isn't as maybe cinematic as you know, Inflow's production flourishes on the last 2 records, what we have here is, you know, referenced I Quit by Haim, you know, all the different genres here. I think again there's just so much going on, and it's done so well, quite deftly. Like I say, it's maybe not as strident as the previous 2 records, but you know, I think this is an album which takes a little while to really bed in, but when it does, you know, I put this on a pedestal, you know, up there with those previous 2. Maybe not quite hitting those heights, but to even get close, I think is pretty outstanding. And to make that such a run of fantastic records from Simz. So yeah, onto a few of the tracks in particular. You know, he kicks off with Thief. You know, Your Company, Going Down the Hill, Thank God I Never Signed No Deal. You know, Inflow. Venomous opening track here, you know, and it kind of continues that anger which was on the previous one and before all of this kicked off, and that was more at the industry at large on No Thank You. So you get that one. Then we got Flood coming in, which I was slightly ambivalent when it first came out. I love the drums on this, you know, the tom drumming and but I think I was kind of going, where's Simz here? It's so she's kind of like whispers her rapping here, but actually, you know, in the context of the album, works really well. And there's, you know, particularly at the beginning, there's so many change ups, because then you hit the one which is the most controversial and seems that a lot of people really dislike with Young, which reminds me of kind of an Eminem effort in the sense of just going for a real palette cleanser and just going for something a bit fun and quite punky as well, which I think is quite cool. So yeah, I get why this is quite jarring for a lot of people listening. But I do think, you know, it's mercifully short. And actually in the context of the album works quite well and just keeps things quite varied and fluid. Because then I think from that point onwards, we go into a lot more contemplative, kind of more chilled kind of ambience. You know, you got Peace with Moses Sumney and Mira May, Soul Searching, you know, and there's a lot of those similar tracks on here which kind of really pare it down a little bit and gets you on her level, but it's never not inviting or compelling in its own way. I mean, Hollow is potentially my favorite one on here, where she takes aim again, a cappella rap. You got you get some orchestral instrumentation here, and it's got here that it was like almost Disney style atmosphere in it. And then Blood featuring Wretch 32 and Cash is really quite fascinating lyrically, and a kind of family drama wrapped up with Wretch as her brother in the track. And then talking about how they should, take better care of their mother. And an honest conversation. If you want greener grass, you better water where you are. Things like that. I just love the thought which goes into it, and the way she delivers. And then probably last shout out, Lotus featuring Michael Kiwanuka and Yusuf Days. Here it's just, I mean, Kiwanuka and Days, fantastic artists in their own right, but bringing the three of them together is just like super band territory. It's just, and it really works. And of course, we got Sampha coming into the record as well. But like I say, slightly more understated than where she's been and left things previously. But I just think this is a huge triumph, really, in the context of how this has come together, and like I say, just absolute props there to the producer on pulling it together and making this, sit comfortably up there with the very best of Simz's work, and keeping her at the top of the tree for me. So always drawn to the nods, Karl. I'm gonna go to you. It feels like you want to jump in. So
yeah, I mean, it's one of those. If you had to pick this one, Andrew, I certainly would have this month. So it's by far one of my most anticipated records of the year. Echo what you said. Simz coming off the back of like that legendary 3-album run. Last one being one of my albums of the year. So yeah, very high expectations heading into this one. Especially after seeing her perform a few of these tracks live in Nottingham a couple of days before the album dropped, which was a really lucky experience, I'd say. Always good to get a little, live premiere, which again, I wish artists would do more preview shows than album launch shows. I just love hearing an album like for the first time in a live setting. I think it's really great. But yeah, high expectations, and echo your thoughts. I think she's exceeded them once again. You mentioned Inflow, and his spectre haunts this project in more ways than one. Lyrically, it's that betrayal that kind of sits at the heart of this record, and in particular, Simz's songwriting, whether that's directly, as you mentioned, on tracks like Thief, and the other one that really stood out was Lonely. Similar to, it's funny the parallels with her and Self-Esteem in not just the release schedule, but similar, like watching the BBC thing with Little Simz. She was very honest as well about the pressure to follow up that, a huge critical acclaim and the Mercury Prize, and dealing with the writer's block. But on top of that, she had that additional pressure of not having a like songwriting partner with her in terms of Inflow. Like she was it. I'm trying to remember which album it was on, but she compared them to De Niro and Scorsese on the last one, I think it was, and we know what happened to De Niro without Scorsese. So thankfully that doesn't Simz doesn't follow that trend, but you can tell that was probably on her mind when she was making this record. But outside of the kind of lyrical content, his, you mentioned it, Andrew, his absence from the sonic tapestry of Sim's work is noticeable. It's a much more raw record. It's more punk in its energy, not just on Young, but I think in general, that kind of comes across. Though we don't get that grandiose kind of orchestration. And yeah, I think Simz does the best thing that she could have done and got some of her, best collaborators in, Obongi, I can't say his name, Obongi Yahar. I think he kills it again on Flood and Lion. Obviously, did Point and Kill, which is, you know, still one of her best tracks to date off Sometimes Might Be Introvert. And I think, yeah, he does a great job on this one as well. Obviously, you mentioned Kiwanuka and Yusuf Days. They absolutely light up that title track. Um, and then I agree with Fantano, that Wretch 32's appearance on Blood. I think he called it one of the features of the year. I'm inclined to agree with that. Reminded me of, obviously, Kendrick had that song on Mr. Morale where it's like the argument between the husband and wife, but it was obviously done to kind of relate to the two genders, kind of male and female, fighting with each other. And I think, yeah, similar vibes on this one, but I think this track has much more replayability than that one did. I think it's just a great song in its own right. Um, and then another one that you mentioned, my favorite song on the whole record, Peace, the wonderful Moses Sumney. And then we get those soft vocals from, newcomer Mira May. Just an absolutely beautiful track, really kind of intimate, and it just really stands out for me. But yeah, aside from all those great collabs and features, it's still, Simz who remains the star of the show here for me. Like you said, Andrew, her penmanship just remains unmatched. If anything, the betrayal and, that the new perspective that she's found, I think it's only made her sharper. Um, yeah, you mentioned a track like Young, which divisive, but I think it's one of those songs that's best experienced with the music video. Definitely to check out the music video if you've not seen it, because obviously it's got Simz dressed up as like an old woman in that, and it just kind of adds to the whole storytelling of that song. But yeah, I think even on record, it's just a really fun track. It's kind of Simz giving her observations on, the youth of today, but sort of through the lens of knowing what she was like at that age. And just, it's almost like reminding everyone that we were all young and dumb at one time. And now we're older. We think we know better. But yeah, it's just that perspective that she's kind of gained along the way. Really comes through on that track. So I'm with you, Andrew. I'm glad that it's on there. I think it fits in really nicely with the record. So yeah, I mean, for me, I won't say too much more because I think you nailed it, Andrew. It's another year-end contender again from Simz. You could argue, yeah, it's maybe the weakest of her last four, but I mean, for me, it's I maybe haven't spun it as much as Grey Area, Introvert, or No Thank You when they dropped. But I think given the circumstances of how it came together, um, yeah, like you said, it's the best album she could have made in those conditions. And every time I do listen to it, it's still right up there with, some of the best hip hop records released all year. And as we've talked about in our chat, there's been some good ones this year. So yeah, it's just Simz doing Simz things, and yeah, another must listen project from her, I'd say.
Okay, Kylie, must listen for you, Lotus.
Um, yeah, I've been dreading this. I agree with a lot of what you guys have been saying, and I've looked at album of the year, and I know it's a very highly regarded record critically and listener. But I don't know what it is. Little Simz is just not, as time goes on, is less enticing for me. I'll start with the positives. I think all the money on this record's in the back half. I absolutely love Lion, Abang Yahar, also that, like Karl said on Flood, just awesome stuff. And Enough, Blood, that Wretch 32 feature. And absolutely love Lotus. I think Lion and Lotus are probably my favorite tracks here. Little Simz herself, I think lyrically, this is a phenomenal record. Great flow. With that being said, yeah, obviously there's all the drama with inflow, and all the stuff that's gone down. But for me, this record is missing a little more in the beats department. Just throughout, outside of her vocal work, I don't find myself as invested in this record as I want to be. And I've loved a lot of her past records. And I don't disagree with with you guys saying the situation that she's in. I think this was a good. I think she made the best of the situation. Is what I'll say, because I can't. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills with this record because I know how much everyone loves it. But it's just it's not doing anything for me. I was talking to a buddy of mine about this record a couple of weeks ago, and I just think sometimes hip hop, more than any other genre, can be so regionally important. And a lot of the times, I don't find myself as drawn to UK hip hop as I am American hip hop. And that's just because, you know, it's the roots of the genre that I've grown up on. And, that seems to be what interests me. But yeah, I really want to like this record more than I do. And would say I would still look forward to the next record. And, maybe she'll work with a different producer on that album. But it's just, there's something about the beats are just kind of boring to me. So I can't fully get into it.
There we go. There's interesting on the regional point, because that was the whole Drake thing recently, wasn't it? That I think to kind of win over his fans during his controversial Wireless performance in London, he was going on about London rappers are the best and all this. And I saw Fantano did a short thing where he was like London versus New York and all this kind of stuff. And yeah. It was sort of sparked a bit of a debate on that front. So yeah, maybe for another day.
I wouldn't put Little Simz and Drake in the same category whatsoever. She's she's phenomenal. So.
Yeah, but I think he was like saying more so than America, but I think it's probably clearly based on where he's feeling the love more. That's based on the wars with some of the most high profile American rappers, of course. Just slight aside on this, but Song Exploder, I'm sure, have you listened to that podcast?
Yeah.
But they've got one on free from this record, and I absolutely love that episode. So just for the process and that, and yeah, it's always fascinating to sort of see how a song is constructed and how sometimes there's actually way more going on that particular song than I realized from listening to it. But anyway, we're on this task now.
Yeah. I just because this is also something that, I find a lot of time is that, Karl, you were saying like having a pre-show for this. And a lot of times there's albums that I don't necessarily enjoy so much, but then you see it live and really appreciate it. Like, how would you, rate the record versus how they sounded at the show?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because it was one of those where it's like when I heard Lonely and when I heard Lion, I was just like, oh yeah, those sounded really good live. So when I went into them, I was already expecting them to be good. So it's and then obviously, it was kind of like, oh yeah, they came across like they did in the live setting as well. So yeah, it's tough to say when you do it that way. because it is more often where, like you say, you listen to a song in a live setting and it's like, oh yeah, I really didn't rate this one before, but now it's like great song. It's like the one that just came to my mind is Midas, the title track off the Wonder Horse record. Obviously, I said to you guys, or it was the weakest song on the album, but seen it live a few times now. It's like great set opener. Like that's obviously why they wrote it, to open their live set with. So it's but yeah, when you hear it live first, I think you almost already have that. Then when you go to the record, so it kind of flips it around a little bit. It's almost like, yeah, that additional piece of the puzzle already comes with the listening. So, but yeah, I would say, yeah, it definitely translated to it sounded great live, but I enjoyed it on record as well. So, but yeah, may not help you, Kylie.
That's an interesting perspective.
just
I
curious,
suppose you don't often sort of obviously hear an album or the tracks off it before you listen to the album.
Yeah.
Whereas the flip the other way, I've often felt, or there's been times where an album, like I've got a certain level where I think it is, and I go and see a band live, and one example in particular was the Murder Capital with their first album, When I Have Fears, which I thought that's a very good debut. And then I saw it live and the emotion they had, which like really carried through. And then suddenly I was like, there's that extra 10% which I maybe felt was missing. And I went back to it and loved it so much more than I initially did. So yeah, interesting. And like you say with Midas, like how it kind of you see it live and then you go, and then maybe it's still not enjoyable listening on the record, but it might have a slightly elevated state having seen it live and got that sense of it. So yeah, an interesting one. Another one we could easily go.
Yeah, I even think, listening to it, there was a few times I wondered too if I was listening to it on vinyl, if I would, like, I just don't know if it's the digital version that's not, the beats aren't translating or what, but just there's so many variables in how a song can sound.
Indeed, right.